going to conclude the mimer that we've been learning the entire last week, which is still a Shavuos mimer, still, I guess, under the influence of Shavuos and Torah, etc. We're holding on page Chaf, towards the bottom of the page, line 24. And we were speaking about how the Nefesh Elokis can affect in the Nefesh Bahamis, and what power it has to do so because of the way it reaches into its Shodesh that is way higher, because the Nefesh Bahamis is Shodesh is in the world of Toy. The Nefesh Elokis is Shodesh is in the world of Tikkun. Therefore, being that's the case, it should be most probably quite difficult for the Nefesh Bahamis to be able to be overcome and influenced by Nefesh Elokis, which is of a lower level. Really, in truth, Nefesh Elokis' source is in the level of Atzmos. And because of its source in the level of Atzmos, higher than in the Giluyim, where in the Giluyim, Nefesh Bahamis is higher than Nefesh Elokis, or on the same par with Nefesh Elokis. Because of that, the Nefesh Elokis could influence and bring the Nefesh Bahamis to the state of Mesiras Nefesh, and through bringing the Nefesh Bahamis to the state of Mesiras Nefesh, it also experiences Mesiras Nefesh, which in and of itself, there is no Mesiras Nefesh for Nefesh Elokis, because Mesiras Nefesh means going against your will or giving away your will and devoting yourself beyond your will. Nefesh Elokis' will is in godliness. Hashenkin and Nefesh Bahamis, it wants other things than godliness. So when it chooses or it gets involved in godliness, it is an idea of Mesiras Nefesh, and that has a blowback effect that when the Nefesh Elokis influence in the Nefesh Elokis to have Mesiras Nefesh, Nefesh Elokis also taps into that Mesiras Nefesh as well. On the other hand, just because it taps into that, this still needs to be explained how the Nefesh Elokis has that and how it has that capability to be able to affect the Nefesh Bahamis. So that's what we're going to talk about now, the Shodesh of the Nefesh Elokis, that because of that, it's able to tap into that. So he says that it comes from a level of Nefesh Elokis, the way it's Mushash and Atzmos, and that's what it says. Kimaimer, line 24 again. Kimaimer, like it says, it means Nimlach. Who did Hashem consult when He had to create the world? So He consulted. Who did He consult? Benish Meisayim v'yesh girsa benachshisayim tzadik. He consulted the neshamas, or another version is the nefashos of tzaddik. So let's explain this outside what this means, because also later we're going to talk a little bit about this. It doesn't mean, obviously, that the Eibishter sat down the neshamas of the tzaddikim in front of Him and had a consultation. Rather, the consultation that the Eibishter had with the neshamas of the tzaddikim was in such a way that we're going to mention it over the neck later on, that it was halos man mineu bei. In other words, within the Eibishter himself, he considered what would the tzaddikim be like. In other words, what would we derive from the tzaddikim, and that tipped the scales, if you will, to actually decide to create the world. Now, what this means is, before Hashem wanted to create the world, the Eibishter needed to consult with tzaddikim, v'amichum tzaddikim yat consultim. This means that as high as Hashem's will is, and as far back as you can trace Hashem's will to create the world, neshamas who determined that will, who brought about the decision of that will, must be higher than that will, and that's why it brings about that will. So that's what he's going to talk about now. Line 26, the Indian Hamlacha Madrege Shalomayla Marotz, and the idea of consultation. That the Eibishter consulted the Yidden is no level, it's beyond will. Since Hashem consulted the neshamas of tzaddikim, Hareish and neshamas Yisrael, so therefore we must say that the neshamas of Yidden are even higher than the level called Rotzen Hamuchla. Ratzon HaMuchlat, Chassidus explains, is the deepest, most core aspect of very essential wills. There's a level called Ratzon HaGoli, a revealed will, where the person wants something openly, they're conscious of it, in their mind and their heart, they want something. Then there's a level called Ratzon HaMuchlat. Ratzon HaMuchlat is levels beyond the level of Ratzon HaGoli. There's a Ratzon HaNelam on top of Ratzon HaGoli, and then there's Ratzon HaMuchlat. Ratzon HaMuchlat is a type of will which the person that has the will down here in our world is completely not conscious of it. It's something built in to their very essential nature of who they are. Two examples of this in Chassidus is that the Ratzon to be a king, again, king, the way Torah understands the idea of kingship, not just someone that's power hungry and wants dictatorial powers and so on, but the true idea of leadership and kingship has to come from a place that's so deep inside that the person himself is not even aware of it, and because it's so deep, one needs to do all types of things to be able to bring it to the fore. There needs to be the coronation and the bittul of the nation. Not important for what we're talking about here. Another example, which he talks about over here, which he mentions over here in passing, is the Ratzon for a home. It says, someone that has no home is not considered a person, not considered a human being. So it's like built into the very that they want to have, and they need to have a home. This is regardless if they are conscious of it, regardless if they have come to any type of inkling of thinking about it, that I want it, and so on. And later we can explain that this is because of Hashem's will and desire to have a home down here below. So everything comes down by us, so therefore we also have the desire to have a home. But putting that aside, Ratzon HaMuchlat is the first step before there can be an eventual, through different levels of coming down, a Ratzon HaGoli to something. If a person would not have had a Ratzon HaMuchlat for kingship, then the Ratzon HaGoli of being a king would not really be the true idea of kingship and so on. And in a similar vein, the will that a person, the desire, the interest that a person has in the house is really rooted in this level of Ratzon HaMuchlat. So the Rebbe says that when a Yid, or when the Shamas of the Tzaddikim, were the ones that were consulted to bring about the Ratzon of the Eibishter, and that's why they are rooted in Hashem's essence. This means that the Yidden are rooted higher than even the Ratzon HaMuchlat. Let's go on to line 29. Through the level of the Yidden being consulted, that's how Hashem came to the level of having this Ratzon HaMuchlat. So the Rebbe is right away going to challenge that statement. The very meaning of Ratzon HaMuchlat means that this is something deep-seated within me in a subconscious level that I'm not even aware of it, and it takes certain types of situations and conditions to bring it to the fore. So in the physical world, in a human being down here, one cannot say that they need to consult someone to be able to attain a Ratzon HaMuchlat to be a home, to have a home, or they would consult someone to have a Ratzon HaMuchlat to be a king. That doesn't apply, because the whole idea of Ratzon HaMuchlat is it's so deep-seated, I'm not even aware of it. So you can't consult anyone. Now, when he's talking about by the Eibishter, he's saying, me Nimlach, which is saying Tzaddik, who did Hashem consult concerning having a will for the creation of the world? That's the neshamas of Yidden. And then the Rebbe says, not the revealed will, but the Ratzon HaMuchlat. How could that be? Ratzon HaMuchlat is beyond a decision-making place. It's beyond a conscious place. So the Rebbe says that's all fine and good by a human being down here below. When we're talking about Hashem, it's impossible to say that type of concept because there's nothing innate and must be and has to be by the Eibishter. Even the Ratzon HaMuchlet, which by us is just part of our very makeup, Hashem has to choose to have the Ratzon HaMuchlet, and that choice to even have the Ratzon HaMuchlet comes because of the consultation with the Shamas of Tzaddik. Let's see it inside. Last line on page Chaf, line 30. Hine harotzon hamuchlet shelo mailo, top of page Chaf Aleph. Ein adoyme larotzon hamuchlet sheba'adam lamata. The rotzon hamuchlet above is not similar to the rotzon hamuchlet by a person down here below. Now he gives an example of one of the classic rotzon hamukhlets. Moya rotzon labayis. For example, the will to want to have a home. This is something that a person has by the very nature. They were born with this, that a person, a human being, wants to have a home, whether they are conscious of it or not. To such a degree is it part of the very makeup of a human being that the Chazal say that if he doesn't have a home, he's not a human being. So since a human being is a human being, it must be deep down, whether they're aware of it or not, a will for it. So the Rebbe challenges that as well. He's saying, it's different by Hashem and down here. That Hashem's Ratzon HaMuchlet is something that he could choose to have. By us, we don't have a choice. But wait a second. Didn't this Ratzon HaMuchlet for a home that we have, wasn't that a result of Hashem's wish to have a home? So how can you make a distinction and say that our wish to have a home is just built in and we have no control over it, and Hashem has it by choice? And obviously the answer is going to be, it's not a problem. But let's see it inside. Line 3 on page Chafal. Though the reason for the fact that a person has this Ratzon HaMuchlet by his very nature to have a home, what's the reason for it? Nature came to the because that's the way it is above by Hashem. Technology by Hashem, this is what Hashem desired, to have a home down here below. And because Hashem wanted a home, that's why we have this nature by created beings. But it doesn't mean that in every component, in every aspect, we are the same. Just to give a simple example. The reason why we have the power of sight down here, vision, eyes down here, is because there's a spiritual level of eyes above. There's a spiritual level of visions above. And like we know in everything, but it doesn't mean you can compare our limited vision to Hashem's type of way of seeing things. The same thing, even though the reason why we have a Ratzon HaMuchlet, this innate will to have a home, is a result of Hashem's will for a home that goes deep in a way of Ratzon HaMuchlet. That doesn't mean that just like we can't help ourselves to have this will, and this Ratzon HaMuchlet is just a deep-seated will beyond our control, we're going to say the same thing is by the Eibishter, that it's also beyond his control. Chas v'sholom. So it says, let's see inside line 7, Mikol Mokim still in all. Above all matters are by choice. Therefore, you can't say that Hashem is kaviyachol forced to have this will. So too, it's also in the Ratzon HaMuchlet that even though by a human being down here, Ratzon HaMuchlet, he has no choice to say over the matter, this is just built into his very being. But by Hashem, the Ratzon HaMuchlet is something that Hashem decides to have. Now, the fact that Hashem decides to have it, going back to the previous point, who did Hashem consult and who helped Hashem make this decision? This idea that they should have a Ratzon HaMuchlet to create the world is only because of the neshamas of the Yid. So this shows us how high Yidden are rooted in Hashem. All of this is to bring how Yidden's source is way, way higher than the world of Toyu, way, way higher than the source of the Nefesh Habahamis, we are even beyond the level of Hashem's will. He says, since they are rooted beyond the level of Hashem's will, the level of the master of the will, that is the level that the Yidden are rooted in, where the root will emanated from. And that's why we can assist and we can be consulted if they should have a will or not. And at this level, the level of Hashem's essence, the level of Baal beyond the will, that's where the avoid of refining the Nefesh Bahamis reaches. The feature of Chinazu, Nimshach HaKoyach LaAvoidazu. Why does the avoid of the Bir Nefesh Bahamis reach and result in a connection with that level that's beyond everything, beyond the will? It's because, as we were mentioning before, how does the Nefesh Elikis even have the capability to influence Nefesh Bahamis? Since the Nefesh Bahamis, the source is from Toyu, Nefesh Elikis comes from Tikkun. How can the Nefesh Elikis influence? Because it comes from the level of Atzmus, Balarotzen. So since it is enabled by the level of the Ein Sof, the Balarotzen, therefore we are receiving our reward from that level as well. In this level of the Balarotz in line 14, that's where the purpose, intent, and will for the general avoid of refining of Shabbamis, that's where it came from Hashem's essence. That is what wanted this idea that Nefesh Elikis should refine the Nefesh Bahamis. So now he's going to get into the topic of this concept of what matters to Hashem. The very famous question is, does it matter to Hashem if I put on film? Does it not? Is Hashem doing it for me? Is he doing it for him? Here we are saying that from the level of Hashem's essence, from the Balarotzen, is where the source and the purpose comes from, the interest of Hashem's idea that Nefesh Elikis should overcome Nefesh Bahamis. So how does that reflect and fit in with the general idea that we know about Hashem's aloofness, if you will, from our avoid? It says in line 15, page Chafallah, the idea behind this is concerning the general idea of our service to Hashem. We find contradictions in different statements from the Chazal. Sometimes it's brought down at the time when Yidden fulfill the will of Hashem. The Chazal say, we add strength, power, might to Hashem. We are energizing, we are feeding Hashem. Just like Kaviyachol, if I eat or I do healthy activities, I exercise, that gives me energy. Kaviyachol, a Yid doing their avodah down here strengthens Hashem. Shnemar and Chazal derived from the pasuk, now the power of Adnai should increase. And Chazal say through saying Adnai and so on, and that's also connected with the idea of Adnai having to do with Malchus and Shechina, and you're adding more koyach to the Shechina every mitzvah that we do and so on. And this is a two-way street. Heaven forbid the opposite. If we do not fulfill the will of the Eibishter, metaphorically speaking, we are weakening the power of above. Just the opposite of Yigdal no koyach adnei. That the koyach increases and grows, it becomes weak. Like it says in the Shira Tzuri, the rock that gave birth to you is teshi from the word weakness. And the Chazal say that when a Yid, over there it's talking about when in Azinu, when the Yidden will Chas v'shalom not do what they're supposed to do. The Chazal explained that when Yidden do not do what they're supposed to do, kaviyachol matishin koyche shel mayla. Metaphorically speaking, they are weakening Hashem's power and energy. But that is one approach. Don't know what's going on. I hope. Was everybody able to hear beforehand what was going on?
You've been really choppy, like you're not having enough bandwidth.
Oh wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to find a different location tomorrow then. Sorry about that.
That might be it.
Okay, let's continue. Maybe we'll relearn this tomorrow again. So when a person has this level of when he does the avoid of the Eibishter, we say he strengthens the Eibishter, and Chas v'Shalom, when a person does not do the avoid of the Eibishter, so he kaviyachol weakens the Eibishter. So that's one approach in certain Amar Chazal, that what we do impacts the Eibishter. Line 23 on page Chafal, Lafomim, he says sometimes it's brought down. Does it make a difference to the Eibishter whether a person does shchita by the throat or he does shchita by beginning to cut from the neck instead of cutting the throat? Then Chazal say, no, it doesn't make a difference, but rather, mitzvahs were only given to refine the creatures. So therefore, we find a contradiction over here. Which is it? Are we impacting, and is our work of necessity to Hashem helps Hashem, or is this only that Hashem wanted our self-improvement? By the way, just a side thing, the fact that Hashem wanted our self-improvement is nothing to scoff at. It's like, you go to, let's say, a doctor. The doctor says, I want you to exercise and eat healthy foods and whatever, etc., etc. He doesn't need you to do that. But his concern is real for you, and he cares, and he wants you to be a healthy person. For whatever reason, he has that concern. But it's not something to say, well, doctor, doesn't make a difference to you anyway if I eat junk food and I, sit on my couch all day. It has no relevance. It's still something that's important for me. Same thing, even if we were to say that to Hashem, it doesn't touch him whatsoever. If I do Torah mitzvahs, I don't do Torah mitzvahs, but Torah mitzvahs helps me out, is beneficial for me. That's still a very powerful thing. But still in all, we need to reconcile the two Mamar Chazal. It says in line 25, when the word it's explained in this, this is what Chazal said, what does it bother Hashem that whether we do shchita from the throat or from the neck? It's brought on Kabbalah Sfarim that this is the level of the master, the singular one, the only one, the root of roots, which is a non-Chassidus, a different Kabbalistic type of terminology for what Chassidus calls Shazel, B'chinas Atzmas, by himself, to Kaidim Alois Haratzin. This is the essence of the Erenesav that's prior to the Alois Haratzin, Shloi Ichpas Leklal. It makes no difference to him whatsoever. That level, top of page Chavez, over there, our avodah doesn't touch him. And over there, it doesn't make a difference whether we shech an animal from the throat or we shech the animal from the neck. Only the level of godliness that's enclosed in the world, over there, avodah matters. In other words, like we said before, the Shechina, the level of Adonai, the level of Malacham that receives from Kutchabrichu, the level of the unity of Sovim and Memale, the world gains from it, the godliness that's in the world gains when I put on film, when I shech the way it's supposed to be shechted, etc., because it ensures that all the pipelines are open and all the hashpahs in the world are open. But in Hashem's very essence, over there, it doesn't matter. But just to put it in a little bit different wording, be able to see where he's going. Despite that, Chassidus explains that even though, and we had this mamorim, even if the details of the avodah, which is shechting from the throat versus shechting from the neck, doesn't make a difference in Hashem's very essence. That only matters in Seder Shnalshlus, in the spheres of Atzilus, and Shechina, and Kuchablichu, and so on. But the idea of avodah, the fact that I need to work on myself, the fact that I need to change myself, the fact that I need to subdue my desires, to choose to eat an animal only that was shechted from the throat and not to eat an animal that was shechted from the neck, to put on film on my left hand if I'm a righty, and not to put on film on my right hand. All of these ideas, the level of avodah, this matters to Hashem's very essence. In the terminology of this mimer, it's the idea that the Nefesh Elokis is influencing Nefesh Habamis matters to the Eibishter. The details, that's already for Seder Ishtalshlus to decide. Film has to be done this way, and Mezuzah has to be done this way, and Shechita has to be done this way, and Shabbos has to be done this way, with all the minute details that go into that. But in Hashem's essence, what matters is my transforming myself, my having the influence of the Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Habam. Let's see it inside. So he says, line 3 on page Chav Beis, the fact that the Chazal say that it doesn't matter to Hashem whether I shech from the throat or from the neck, even though it doesn't matter to the Eibishter whether I shech from the throat or the neck. Still, in all nitnu mitzvahs kedei tzarf and masabriyas, the Eibishter gave the mitzvahs for what purpose? It's
Are you guys still on?
Yeah, we're here.
Can you hear him? I don't hear him.
He's not on, or he's not talking yet.
Oh.
He's got a bad connection today. Morning, Zalman.
What's up, Reuven? Morning.
Hey, man.
No. So it doesn't matter which way you shecht it, you hear? You're hungry, you shecht it.
It does matter.
Sometimes.
All the time. Control your hunger.
Okay. Corrected. Stand corrected. I stand. He's going to call me. I'll tell you that. Yeah.